And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen back on the show, a Democrat representing Maryland. Before the Senate, served in the House of Representatives, currently serves on Foreign Relations Committee, Budget Committee, and more. Senator Van Hollen, nice to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for being on.
Dean, it's great to be with you.
And can I just say at the outset, thank you for the last year and a half, and even before that, but certainly in the last year and a half, talking about Palestinian humanity and being concerned with that. We can be concerned with both Israeli hostages and Palestinian humanity. It's sadly too many politicians just pick uh, whatever they think is helping them politically, or however they view it, perhaps religiously from these Christian nationalist point of view. But we can be concerned for both people, and I appreciate you so much that you've spoken about Palestinian humanity very powerfully over the time.
Well, thank you for mentioning it. Look, we can recognize the horror of the Hamas attacks of
Sure.
October 7th, and at the same time, recognize the absolutely horrible humanitarian situation in Gaza today, both with the limitations that were placed on humanitarian supplies, as well as the huge civilian death toll. And it has been my view that the United States needs to do more to ensure that Palestinian civilians have what they need to survive, and that we need to get to the ceasefire and the return of hostages. I'm glad, Dean, we've finally gotten to that point, at least initially. Now the key will be full implementation.
Certainly. And then I hope the United States can play a constructive role going forward. If Trump wants to, if he wants to lean in on it, perhaps he might be able to have some leverage. I don't really know what his motivations are. I have no idea how he thinks. I have no clue what goes on with him. But if he wanted to lean into it, perhaps there'd be something with a two-state solution that could work, and then Saudi Arabia involved in normalizing relations with Israel, like a global Middle East deal, and then have a Middle East EU, so to speak, which really could flourish and be great for all the people. But I've been talking about this forever. I've been active for so long, and it keeps escaping all the time. Every time we think there's hope, it just flutters away.
Well, you're absolutely right in putting forward that vision, and President Biden laid out an important framework to create some light at the end of this very dark tunnel. Once we get the ceasefire in place and all the hostages are returned, it does require Palestinian governance in
Hmm.
Gaza, and then moving toward a Palestinian state. And that would be coupled with normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel and other countries in the region. I was and remain critical of the fact that President Biden did not effectively exercise American influence in order to achieve that path and get a faster end to the war and a faster release of the hostages. But I do believe President Trump, if he wants to exercise American leverage, can do so, because that leverage needs to be, pursued with respect to reform among the Palestinian Authority, but it also needs to be pursued with respect to what is now a very right-wing Netanyahu government that has people like the finance minister Smotrich as part of it, who has vowed, never to support a Palestinian state. And of course, Netanyahu himself
Hmm.
has now bragged about the fact that he always opposed Oslo, and he's opposed to a Palestinian state, even in the context of normalization with Saudi Arabia. But it's my strong view that if we want to have security and self-determination and dignity for Israelis and Palestinians alike, which is the only path toward long-term peace and stability, that's going to be the way we have to go.
I hope so too. And that's why, yesterday, the confirmation hearing, you were asking questions to Elise Stefanik, who's Trump's nominee for UN ambassador. And her view is that the West Bank should be just part of Israel. And that's the view of Netanyahu and people on the right, Likud and far right parties. And the result is it's the oppression and occupation of Christians and Muslims simply because of their faith. And that can no longer be acceptable. I don't know how it's been acceptable in conversation with people over time, but that can't be, because that's their view on the far right, that they're Christians and Muslims and they don't get the same rights. And that's just fundamentally wrong as an American. Now, even though I'm Palestinian heritage, as an American, to me, I find that an anathema to my view of values and what we should stand for as a nation and what we should be pushing for.
Well, that's right. Look, I asked Elise Stefanik, Congresswoman Stefanik, if she believed that Palestinians should have not just human rights, but the right of self-determination. And she refused to acknowledge that
No.
they should have the same rights of self-determination as other peoples around the world. And she said she agreed with people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and the and the far right in Israel that Israel has a biblical right to the entire West Bank, which of course is totally at odds with the position the United States has traditionally taken on a bipartisan basis. I mean, Secretary Blinken acknowledged that expansion of the settlement was, violated international law. If she's confirmed as our ambassador to the United Nations, there are lots of UN Security Council resolutions that the United States has supported regarding ensuring that the resolution of this conflict, and so her views indicate that she's not prepared to move forward and allow self-determination for the Palestinian people. Very, very troubling, and we will not achieve peace and security along the lines that she's outlined.
Certainly. And if she's going to cite the Bible, I mean, does she also believe that a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night? She should be stoned in front of her father's house, or that women should learn in silence, which it says in other parts of the Bible. I mean, you can't cherry pick it. You got to be all of it. U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen. So to change gears, Senator Donald Trump did what he promised and more. He pardoned every single one of the January 6th attackers, including those who are objectively speaking terrorists, the ones who are engaged in actual violence and the plotting, oath keepers and Proud Boys. Christopher Wray testified before Congress January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism. So some of them are terrorists, the ones in violence. But what's striking for me, and I don't want to make this all about me, but being Muslim, Donald Trump said in 2016 campaign that Muslims, we know where the terrorists are and that we're hiding them and that we have to, if we don't do the right thing, that they're going to come after our families and close our places of worship. Well, Donald Trump just pardoned terrorists, literally terrorists. And it is stunning to me. What is your reaction to this, and especially with the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers convicted of seditious conspiracy, which is right below treason? I mean, we're talking about literally a crime right below treason.
Well, Dean, if you look at the Donald Trump's campaign, he said he was going to be out there fighting for working men and women across the country. But if you look at the actions he's taken in the last 3 days, they include what you just mentioned. They include, for example, rolling back executive orders that were designed to lower prescription drug prices, executive orders that the Biden administration had put in place. But on the issue you're raising right now, what he did was simply outrageous in giving pardons to individuals who had assaulted and bludgeoned police officers. What he did was an insult to the law enforcement community. It was an insult to the rule of law. And it sends a very terrible and dangerous message that if you commit the political violence in support of Donald Trump, he will take care of you. He will take care of you. So there's one set of rules for people who commit violence in the name of Donald Trump, and another set of rules for everybody else. That is a gross corruption of the rule of law in our justice system.
Are you concerned that potentially it incentivizes more violence by people who might be diehard Trump supporters who are misled and radicalized in a way to commit acts of violence on his behalf?
Oh, I'm very much so, because what it said was if you commit violence in the name of Donald Trump will be there to take care of you, to pardon you. I mean, these are police officers who were beaten bloody on Capitol Hill on January 6th years ago. And what Donald Trump has signaled is that it's okay. And he will be there to pardon you, even when you've been convicted by a jury of your peers under our system for beating the hell out of police officers. It is an outrageous act and a terrible signal going forward.
It is. And I've had on my show in the past Michael Fanone and Sergeant Goodell and Harry Dunn. And, they suffered greatly, and their peers, their fellow officers suffered greatly. And some took their own lives after what they went through. It's a dark day in America. That January 6th was a very dark day, and then Donald Trump pardoning them is close up there. Another thing Trump did with his executive orders is try to rewrite the 14th Amendment, which on a whole separate level is alarming. That he thinks he can sit in his room and literally rewrite the language of the 14th Amendment to be an interpretation that has nowhere been embraced by any court. But the idea of ending birthright citizenship, as we know it, what is your reaction to that, Senator?
Well, look, as you indicated, courts have reviewed this language before and determined that the Constitution includes the right to birthright citizenship. If you're born on the territory of the United States, you have the rights of citizenship. So he cannot change this by executive order. And it, of course, has already been challenged in the courts. I am quite confident that there will be a stay of this executive order or the implementation of this executive order pending any litigation. Now, I do worry that we have a Supreme Court that has been packed by Trump appointees during Trump 1.0 administration, and he's counting on those handpicked justices to do his bidding when it comes to this constitutional question. But I do believe in the immediate term that courts will put this on hold and stay it.
I hope so. I agree with you. I'm a lawyer. I agree. But then when you get to the Supreme Court, all bets are off. But I read that Thursday, unless something changes tomorrow, a judge is going to hear it in Seattle. And it was a Reagan appointee. So that means well, I might disagree with on certain things. They tend to agree. They uphold the Constitution. And if that judge does that, it'll be a stay, and this will then go through the appellate process. We'll see how it plays out. Another thing, today the confirmation hearings are ongoing. Pete Hegseth testified, I think a week ago, Secretary of Defense nomination. Now we have new information from his former sister-in-law, Danielle Hegseth, about erratic and aggressive behavior by him towards his wife, second wife, that allegedly she feared for her safety. But it's not just that. There's credible allegations of rape. He paid hush money to the woman. He is open anti-Muslim bigot in writing, horrible stuff. His drinking problems between him and himself until you become Secretary of Defense and you're in charge of 3.3 million people. And he doesn't have any history of running an organization effectively, let alone one of this size. Can you help us understand why would Republicans support someone like that when I believe a lot of the right really do care about our military and our safety as a nation, but still they're going to give in to Donald Trump, it seems like, for someone who's objectively unqualified.
Well, he is absolutely unqualified. As my colleague, Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island, who's the senior Democrat on the Armed Services Committee and a former Army Ranger, by the way, has said that if you were an officer in the military, you would certainly be denied promotion on this and probably discharged from the U.S. military. And so we shouldn't have the person who's heading the Department of Defense be somebody who, if they were a soldier in the Department of Defense, would be disqualified from any kind of promotion. What we see is a pattern of really unacceptable behavior, most recently outlined under penalty of perjury in the affidavit that you mentioned, but it also comes on top of other comments where he's displayed his sort of anti-Muslim bigotry, where he's also, condoned torture. This is a guy who's supposed to be there to defend all of America and all Americans, and certainly head up as Secretary of Defense a military that's comprised of people from different faiths and different backgrounds. And he's supposed to uphold the rule of law, including international law. Look, he has failed on every count through his past conduct and testimony. He has no business being anywhere close to the Defense Department. which obviously is right at the very center of our national security
Right.
structure and establishment. This should be very concerning for every American that someone like him could be confirmed by a vote in the United States Senate. I hope people will take a step back, look at this pattern of terrible conduct, and say, this is not the person that should be leading the Department of Defense.
Everything you just mentioned, Senator, Donald Trump knew, except maybe one thing he kept from him, but he knew everything else. Is it as simple as Donald Trump sees Pete Hegseth as someone who is absolutely loyal and will do whatever Donald Trump asks of him with our military?
Oh, I sadly, yes, I think that's true. I think that's sadly what what's required for most, if not all, of Donald Trump's picks to head these agencies. It's not, you know, service to the American people. It's not their background or credentials in many cases. It's how they answer one question, which is, will you be loyal only to Donald Trump above the Constitution of the United States? That's what he's looking for. We know from his earlier administration, that whenever there were individuals who questioned some of his policies, including his clearly unconstitutional orders, that he wanted them gone. And so this time around, he's picking yes men and women who will simply do his bidding, even when it violates the laws and the Constitution of the United States.
And just like two last questions, but one bigger question. How concerned are you as we look out now at the beginning of a second term of Donald Trump, a man who just pardoned people who committed violence? Clearly, we both agree to incentivize most, who wants to rewrite the Constitution, who's putting people that are incompetent yet loyal to him in key positions, including someone like Kash Patel for FBI director. In the big picture, how concerned are you? And is there a plan by Senate Democrats on how they're going to take the fight to Donald Trump?
Well, I am concerned, and we will be taking on Donald Trump on these issues and other issues. And Dean, I do want to focus on what Donald Trump ran on,
Mhm.
because his overwhelming message was he was going to be out there fighting for working men and women in America. And in these first couple days, we've seen that's simply not true. Just look at the actions he's taken, right? He's pardoning convicted, felons, people who bloodied police officers. He's taken a number of other actions, but when it comes to the bread and butter kitchen table issues that he really focused on, like lowering prices and costs for the American people, he's actually embarking and laying the foundation to do just the opposite. So today in the Senate Budget Committee, we had Trump's nominee to be the head of OMB. This is the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vought. And they're laying the ground for a tax cut for the very rich, the very wealthy, the biggest corporations, at the expense of everybody else in America. If you looked at that inaugural stage, who got the best seats in the House, right? It was the billionaire tech titans. So when Donald Trump talks about a new golden age, what he's talking about is more giveaways to the very powerful folks at the very top already, the very rich and wealthiest in the country. Everybody else, he's talking about crumbs. And so it's going to be very important that we rally together, that we keep our eye on the ball as Democrats, because he is going to betray the people that he said he wanted to help. And he's going to betray them. He's going to say a lot of things along the way that make them think that he's doing what he promised to do. But what he's actually going to do, and this is watch what he does, is he's going to be providing these tax breaks for the very wealthy. I should also point out, Dean, that while I support targeted tariffs for strategic industries, across the board tariffs are nothing more than a huge sales tax on the American people. And so here's a guy who said he was going to run on, cutting costs and prices, who's going to be doing nothing of the sort, raising prices, while he gives big tax breaks to the very wealthy. So let's keep our eye on the ball, because These are promises he made on the campaign trail that he's already out to break.
He says golden age. I think he means it for himself, that he'll be getting gold from those billionaires who are around him. Or you can buy his meme coin, which I think might be gold. Or maybe he meant gilded age, maybe to be more accurate about the time that we're living through. Very last thing, I know you were raising red flags about Trump's efforts with Schedule F, which is the idea of undermining our civil service. He tried to do it before. What are your concerns about that? These are people who've worked in governments, various administrations. They are government workers doing a great job, and he wants to politicize even that now.
Well, that's right. Look, all of us want to pursue more government efficiency. So if that were the goal, count me in. But Doge, this department that is going to be headed, this quasi department headed by Elon Musk, looks like nothing more than a Trojan horse for getting rid of our current merit-based civil service and replacing it with a cronyism-based civil service. Right now, in order to be hired into the federal service, you do it based on your qualifications, on your experience, on your knowledge. It's based on what you know, not who you know, and who you voted for. And Donald Trump wants to convert that system into a cronyism-based system where he can just pack the government with people who will just do his political bidding. That is a recipe for corruption and for undermining important services to the American people. So, yes, we're very focused on this. I asked Russ Vought, who is going to be the point person in the Trump administration if he gets confirmed as the head of OMB, to do this about these very issues at the hearing. Not surprisingly, Russ Vought essentially said he was going to do what Donald Trump wants to do, and that is to convert these qualified merit-based civil service positions into political cronyism positions.
Absolutely. And it says a lot about my life that on C-SPAN, I'm watching that. I was watching that hearing, and you and Senator Kaine and Senator Murray were doing a really good job. And watching these hearings, Russell Vought, one of the architects of Project 2025, they're going to bring it to life. Senator Van Hollen, it's great to have you on again. Please don't be a stranger. You're welcome anytime you want to talk about any issue. Sincerely, you're always welcome on here. And please, again, I appreciate so much your efforts on behalf of the American people, but also in my community, you're really well respected and really well regarded. So thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your voice. And I think we all want to see long-term peace and stability in the Middle East, not just for the people who live there, but it's in our interests as well. So
thanks.
you and take care.
You too, Senator.